I still remember the day I built my business from a tiny garage in Milwaukee. 40 years and countless sleepless nights later, that same business has secured my retirement and my family's future. When my son Andrew remarried last year to Natalie, I welcomed her with open arms despite my reservations. She brought her 6 children from previous marriages into our lives, and at first everything seemed fine. Then came the whispers about my estate, my legacy, my life's work. Before I tell you how my own family tried to rob me of my life's work, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to protect what's rightfully yours. My name is Buddy Harmon, and at 65 years old, I thought I had seen it all. Growing up in a blue-collar family in the Midwest taught me the value of hard work from an early age. My father worked at the local factory for 35 years, coming home with grease-stained hands and a tired smile. My mother stretched every dollar until it screamed, making miracles happen with ground beef and potatoes. They never had much, but they gave me everything they could, including the work ethic that would shape my future. When I was 22, I spotted an opportunity that nobody else seemed to notice. The construction industry in our area was booming, but equipment rental was a nightmare of paperwork and delays. With $5,000 scraped together from odd jobs and a loan from my reluctant father, I bought my first piece of equipment and started Harmon Equipment Rentals from our family garage. The first year was brutal. I worked 17-hour days, fixed broken machines at 3 in the morning, and drove hundreds of miles to deliver equipment myself. But slowly, painfully, the business grew. One machine became 5, then 20, then an entire fleet. By my 40th birthday, Harmon Equipment had 3 locations across the state and over 50 employees. The small garage operation was now worth millions, though you would never know it by looking at me. I still wore the same style of work boots and drove pickup trucks until they died. Janet, my wife of 38 years, was there from the beginning. She answered phones, kept the books, and believed in me when nobody else would. When cancer took her 5 years ago, it felt like someone had ripped half my soul away. The only thing that kept me going was our son Andrew and his 2 children, Emma and Jack. Andrew never had any interest in the family business. From the time he could read, his nose was always stuck in books about faraway places and ancient civilizations. He eventually became a history professor at the state university, and I could not have been prouder. Different path, same dedication. That was all I ever wanted for him. When it came to my estate planning, things were simple. Everything would go to Andrew with trusts set up for my grandchildren's education. I had worked my entire life to give my family security, and watching Emma and Jack grow up knowing they would never struggle like I did gave me more satisfaction than any business success. Andrew's first marriage seemed perfect from the outside. Sarah was a kindergarten teacher with a gentle spirit and endless patience. They met at a faculty event during his 2nd year of teaching and were married within 18 months. I adored Sarah from our first meeting. She reminded me of Janet in all the best ways, practical and kind without a pretentious bone in her body. Emma came along 2 years into their marriage, a bright-eyed girl with her father's curiosity and her mother's compassion. Jack followed 3 years later, a bundle of energy, who could take apart and reassemble anything mechanical by the time he was 5. Those kids became the center of my world after Janet died. Every weekend was spent at soccer games, science fairs, or just cooking Sunday dinner together at my house. The divorce blindsided everyone. After 12 years of marriage, Andrew and Sarah simply grew in different directions. There were no affairs, no dramatic fights, just 2 people who realized they wanted different things from life. The split was as amicable as these things can be, with shared custody and a commitment to co-parenting that impressed even their lawyers. I maintained a good relationship with Sarah afterward, often watching the kids when they were at her house if she needed to work late or had other commitments. She never tried to limit my time with Emma and Jack, understanding how important we were to each other. This arrangement worked smoothly for nearly 2 years. Then Natalie entered the picture like a hurricane. Andrew met her at a faculty fundraiser where she worked in the development office. According to him, it was an instant connection. Within 3 months they were engaged, and I was meeting my future daughter-in-law for the first time over dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. My first impression of Natalie was generally positive. She was undeniably beautiful, with perfectly highlighted hair, manicured nails, and the kind of polished appearance that suggested careful attention to detail. She laughed easily at Andrew's jokes and asked thoughtful questions about my business. If I noticed that her smile never quite reached her eyes, or that she checked her phone under the table every few minutes, I chalked it up to first meeting nerves. It was during that dinner that I learned about her 6 children from 3 previous marriages. The oldest, Tyler, was 17, followed by twins Sophia and Samuel at 15, Zoe at 12, Ethan at 9, and Lily at 7. 6 children from 3 marriages before the age of 40 struck me as unusual, but I kept those thoughts to myself. Everyone has a past, and it was not my place to judge. The wedding happened just 5 months after they met a lavish affair at an expensive lakeside venue that seemed excessive given Andrew's professor salary. When I quietly asked him about the cost, he mentioned that Natalie had insisted on the location and he had taken out a loan to cover it. Again, I bit my tongue. Andrew was a grown man making his own decisions. Our first holiday together as a blended family was Thanksgiving at my house. I spent 3 days preparing, determined to make everyone feel welcome. Emma and Jack arrived first with Sarah, who dropped them off with a hug and a pie before heading to her parents' house. The kids immediately ran to help me in the kitchen, our usual tradition. An hour later, Andrew arrived with Natalie and her 6 children. The previously quiet house erupted into chaos. The twins immediately claimed the largest sofa, sprawling across it with their phones. Tyler asked if I had any beer despite being underage. Zoe complained loudly about the old people smell of my home, while Ethan and Lily ran through the rooms, touching everything on display. Natalie did little to corral her brood, instead inspecting my home with the critical eye of an appraiser. I caught her opening cabinets in the dining room and peering at maker's marks on the bottom of serving dishes. When I served dinner, she commented on the quaint quality of my grandmother's china and asked pointed questions about its value. Throughout the meal, I noticed how Emma and Jack withdrew into themselves. Usually talkative and animated, they now sat quietly, speaking only when directly addressed. When Jack tried to tell a story about his science project, Sophia loudly interrupted to talk about her own school achievements. Andrew, seated beside Natalie, seemed oblivious to the tension, jumping in to praise his stepchildren at every opportunity, while barely acknowledging his own. As I cleared dishes, Natalie followed me into the kitchen. "This is a beautiful home, buddy," she said, leaning against my granite countertop. "So much space for just one person. Have you ever thought about downsizing? At your age, it might be easier to manage something smaller." "I like my space," I replied simply. "And the grandkids have their own rooms here." "All the grandkids should have their own rooms," she said, with emphasis on all. "Family is family, right? Blood or not." That was the first red flag I could not ignore, a subtle but clear indication of her expectations. Still, I smiled and nodded, unwilling to create conflict during our first holiday together. As the months passed, I saw Andrew and my grandchildren less and less. There was always some reason they could not visit. Natalie had scheduled a family portrait. The twins had a recital. Lily was not feeling well. When they did come over, Natalie almost always accompanied them, keeping a watchful eye on our interactions. Emma, now 10, managed to find a moment alone with me during one visit. "Grandpa," she whispered, "I do not like our new house. My room is tiny because Sophia and Zoe got the big rooms. And Natalie said my books take up too much space." Before I could respond, Natalie appeared in the doorway. "Emma, your father is looking for you. And, buddy, I meant to ask you about your will. Andrew mentioned it has not been updated since Janet passed. That must be a priority at your age." I tried speaking with Andrew privately about my concerns several times. Each attempt was met with defensiveness. "Natalie is just trying to create a unified family," he would say. "Change is hard for everyone, but we need to give it time." My once independent, thoughtful son seemed to have disappeared, replaced by someone who deferred to his new wife on every decision. The situation came to a head during a dinner at my home, 6 months after the wedding. I had invited Andrew's family, hoping to connect with Emma and Jack, whom I had barely seen in weeks. Natalie arrived with all 8 family members in tow, plus her sister and brother-in-law, whom I had never met. Throughout the evening, Natalie's children showed increasing disrespect toward my home and possessions. Tyler spilled red wine on my living room carpet and laughed it off. The twins took selfies with valuable items, pretending to drop them. When I asked them to stop, Natalie interjected, "They're just having fun, buddy. No need to be so uptight about things. They will all be theirs someday. Anyway, right?" The table went silent. Andrew stared at his plate. Emma and Jack looked at me with wide eyes. "What exactly do you mean by that, Natalie?" I asked carefully. She smiled sweetly. "Well, we are family now, and family takes care of family. I assume your will reflects that all the grandchildren will be treated equally. That would be the fair thing to do. My estate planning is private," I said firmly, "and not a topic for dinner conversation." "Oh, come on," she pushed. "We are all adults here. Andrew is your only child, and now he has 8 children to provide for. Surely your will accounts for all of them." "Natalie, that is enough." Andrew finally interjected, his face flushed with embarrassment. "No, it is not enough," she snapped, her polished veneer cracking. "Your father is sitting on a fortune while we are cramped in a house too small for our family. Emma and Jack should not get everything just because they came first." I stood up slowly. "I think dinner is over. Andrew, we need to talk privately soon." Natalie grabbed her purse and stood. "This is exactly the kind of elitist attitude I was talking about, Andrew. Blood above all else." She stormed out, calling for her children to follow. 3 days later, my doorbell rang at 9:30 at night. Andrew stood on my porch with Natalie slightly behind him. Their faces told me this was not a social call. "Can we come in, Dad?" Andrew asked, his voice strained. "We need to talk." I led them to the living room, tension thick in the air. Before I could offer drinks, Natalie launched in. "We will get right to the point, buddy. Andrew and I have discussed the family's future extensively, and we believe your current estate plan is outdated and unfair to our blended family." "Natalie," I said calmly, "my estate planning is not open for discussion. That is my decision alone." "No," she countered, "it is a family decision. Andrew is your only child, which makes all of his children your grandchildren. All 8 of them deserve equal treatment." I turned to my son. "Is this how you feel, Andrew?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, I think it would be the right thing to consider all the kids. They are my family now. Those 6 children have their own fathers," I pointed out. 3 of them, according to Natalie, have their biological fathers contributed to their financial security. Natalie's face hardened. "That is completely irrelevant. We are talking about your responsibility as their step-grandfather. I have no legal or moral obligation to provide for children. I barely know," I stated firmly. "My estate represents my life's work, and I get to decide how it is distributed." "Then you leave us no choice," Natalie declared, standing abruptly. "I have spoken with an attorney. If you will not voluntarily do the right thing, we will take legal action. You promised to treat our family fairly when we married, and we have witnesses to that effect." I was stunned. I never made any such promise. Andrew looked pained, but said nothing to contradict his wife's blatant lie. Natalie continued, her voice cold. "You also should know that if you persist with this outdated will, we will need to reconsider Emma and Jack's relationship with you. It is confusing for our family to maintain connections that reinforce inequality." In that moment, I saw her true colors with perfect clarity. This was not about family at all. This was a calculated attempt to get her hands on my money, using my beloved grandchildren as pawns. "I think you should leave now," I said quietly. "Andrew, I never thought I would say this, but I am deeply disappointed in the man you have become." As they walked out, I heard Natalie whisper to him. That went exactly as I expected. "Get ready for phase 2. 2 weeks after that confrontation, a courier delivered legal papers to my door. The document was titled Complaint for Promissory Estoppel and Constructive Trust. In plain English, Natalie and Andrew were suing me, claiming I had made verbal promises to include all 8 children equally in my estate. They alleged that they had made financial decisions based on these supposed promises, including purchasing a larger home and private school enrollments. Attached were affidavits from Natalie's sister and brother-in-law, both claiming they had heard me make these commitments during family gatherings. It was completely fabricated but professionally packaged in legal language that made it seem legitimate and threatening. I sat at my kitchen table, hands shaking as I read through 20 pages of lies. My own son was party to a lawsuit aimed at forcing me to give away half my estate to children I barely knew based on promises I never made. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had experienced since losing Janet. My first call was to Frank Peterson, my business attorney for over 30 years, and one of my closest friends. He arrived at my house within the hour, grim-faced as he reviewed the documents. "This is aggressive," he said finally, "but not particularly well-founded legally. The problem is, family court can be unpredictable, and these cases often come down to who the judge believes. We need to take this seriously. Frank, they are trying to steal everything I built," I said, my voice breaking, "and they are using my grandchildren as leverage. The complaint specifically mentions that if I do not agree to their terms, they will seek a court order limiting my access to Emma and Jack based on family stability concerns." Frank put his hand on my shoulder. "We will fight this, buddy. First step, we need a specialist. I know the best estate litigation attorney in the state." That night was the longest of my life. I could not sleep, could not eat. The thought of Andrew betraying me so completely was almost physically painful. Where was the thoughtful boy I had raised? How had he been so thoroughly manipulated in less than a year of marriage? The next morning, things got worse. A local news website ran a story with the headline, "Family Feud, Local Business Owner, Accused of Disinheriting Grandchildren." The article quoted sources close to the family claiming I was refusing to recognize my son's new blended family due to prejudice. My phone began ringing non-stop with calls from friends, business associates, and even clients asking what was happening. By afternoon, I had received hostile emails from Natalie's extended family members, some threatening to expose me further if I did not do right by those kids. One of her former in-laws, apparently unaware of the full situation, called to berate me for discriminating against innocent children. The carefully orchestrated public pressure campaign made it clear this was not a spontaneous family disagreement but a calculated attack. Through it all, the most painful aspect was the complete absence of Emma and Jack from my life. My calls went unanswered. Emails to Sarah revealed that the custody arrangement had been temporarily modified at Andrew's request, with the children spending more time at his house and under strict instructions not to contact me. The stress began affecting my health. Always robust despite my age, I suddenly found myself short of breath during my morning walks. My blood pressure, normally controlled, spiked to concerning levels. 3 weeks after receiving the lawsuit, I woke at 2 a.m. with crushing chest pain and called an ambulance. In the hospital emergency room, doctors determined I was not having a heart attack, but experiencing severe stress-related symptoms that had triggered angina. As I lay in the hospital bed with monitors beeping around me, I hit rock bottom. What was the point of fighting? Maybe I should just give in to Natalie's demands and buy back access to my grandchildren. As these thoughts of surrender swirled, there was a soft knock at my hospital room door. To my shock, Andrew stood there looking haggard and uncertain. "Dad, can I come in?" I nodded, too emotional to speak. He approached slowly, eyes widening at the medical equipment surrounding me. They said it was not a heart attack, but... God, Dad, I never wanted this. "What did you want, Andrew?" I managed to ask. "Because suing your father and cutting off his grandchildren seems pretty deliberate." He collapsed into the chair beside my bed, burying his face in his hands. "I do not know who I am anymore," he whispered. Everything happened so fast with Natalie. At first it was exciting. She was passionate, decisive, made me feel alive after the divorce. Then suddenly we were married and the rules kept changing. She convinced me you were being unfair, that your estate plan was an insult to our marriage. And the lawsuit I prompted. I signed the papers without reading them carefully, he admitted, unable to meet my eyes. She said it was just a formal request for mediation. When I saw the news article, I confronted her. We had a huge fight. That is when I realized how much she had been manipulating me, controlling who I talked to, filtering information. A surge of hope rose in my chest. "Andrew, you can put a stop to this." He looked up, fear evident in his eyes. "I do not know if I can. She has threatened to take me for everything in a divorce if I back out now. And the kids. Emma and Jack adore you, but they are scared of her. We all are in different ways." As devastating as this conversation was, it represented a turning point. My son was beginning to see through Natalie's manipulation. And more importantly, my fighting spirit returned. I did not build a business from nothing by giving up when things got tough. I would not start now, especially with so much at stake. The day after my release from the hospital, I met with Maria Ramirez, the estate litigation specialist Frank had recommended. Unlike Frank's grandfatherly demeanor, Maria was sharp-edged and direct with 20 years of experience handling contentious inheritance disputes. "Here is my assessment," she said after reviewing the case files in her downtown office. "Their legal claims are weak, but they are banking on emotion and public pressure to force a settlement. This type of case is rarely about the legal merits. It is about who can withstand the emotional warfare longer. I am not settling," I stated firmly. "Not one dime." Maria smiled for the first time. "Good, because I think we can do more than just defend. We can counterattack." Her plan was aggressive and comprehensive. First, we hired a private investigator to look into Natalie's history, focusing on her previous marriages and financial history. Within days, we had our first breakthrough. Natalie had filed similar claims against her second husband's parents, resulting in a settlement she used to finance an expensive lifestyle for several months before meeting husband number 3. Further digging revealed she was carrying over $80,000 in credit card debt and had recently been denied a home equity loan. This explained the urgency behind her pursuit of my assets. She was not planning for her children's future. She was trying to solve her immediate financial problems. Most damning of all, the investigator discovered communications between Natalie and her sister planning aspects of the lawsuit months before the confrontation at my house. "Just stick to the script about what he supposedly promised," one text read. "Once we file, he will settle, rather than drag his precious reputation through the mud." Meanwhile, Maria prepared our legal response, not just denying their claims, but filing a countersuit for malicious prosecution and defamation. She also contacted Sarah, who was horrified to learn about the situation, and immediately offered to help. As the children's mother, her testimony about my relationship with Emma and Jack would carry significant weight with the court. Andrew continued to waver, caught between fear of Natalie and his emerging recognition of her manipulation. In a secret meeting at my attorney's office, he provided us with emails and text messages showing how Natalie had orchestrated the entire conflict, including coaching her children to act disrespectfully in my home to provoke reactions she could later characterize as hostility toward the blended family. With each piece of evidence, our position strengthened. 2 of Natalie's former husbands, initially reluctant to get involved, eventually provided affidavits describing similar patterns of behavior. One had lost his relationship with his own parents after Natalie manufactured conflicts that escalated until contact became too painful to maintain. The first day of court hearings arrived 6 months after the initial filing. The local courthouse buzzed with unusual activity, as Natalie had alerted several media outlets about the tragic family dispute scheduled to begin. She arrived, dressed conservatively, her 6 children in matching outfits looking like the perfect family portrait. Andrew walked several paces behind them, eyes downcast. I entered through a side door with Maria, Frank, and Sarah, who had taken a day off work to support me. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, named Judge Harriet Benson, began the proceedings by stating firmly that she would not tolerate turning her courtroom into a media circus. "This case will be decided on facts and law," she declared, "not public opinion or emotional appeals." "Is that understood by all parties?" Natalie's attorney, a slick operator named Richard Dawson, known for television commercials, promising to fight for your rights, nodded reluctantly. Maria simply said, "Absolutely, Your Honor." Natalie took the stand first, presenting a masterclass in manipulation. Tears welled at perfectly timed intervals as she described how I had promised to embrace all the grandchildren equally and repeatedly assured the family that my estate would provide for each child's education and future. She spoke of how they had made significant financial commitments based on these promises, including a larger house and private school tuition that they could not possibly afford on a professor's salary without the assurances I had given them. Throughout her testimony, she portrayed herself as a devoted mother, only trying to protect her children from being treated as second-class family members. She described elaborate conversations and promises that had never occurred with such conviction that anyone who did not know me might have been swayed. Then came Maria's cross-examination. What followed was the most masterfully executed legal dismantling I had ever witnessed. Mrs. Harmon Maria began pleasantly. You testified that my client made specific promises regarding his estate on Thanksgiving last year. Can you tell the court who else was present during these conversations? Natalie named her sister and brother-in-law, the same people who had provided affidavits. Interesting, Maria said. And yet Mr. Harmon's neighbor of 20 years, who was also present at that dinner, signed an affidavit stating no such conversation occurred. In fact, he recalls you opening cabinets to examine my client's possessions and making comments about their value. Natalie flushed. He must be mistaken. Maria continued relentlessly. You also claimed these alleged promises influenced major financial decisions, including purchasing a larger home. When exactly did you close on that house, Mrs. Harmon? 3 months after the wedding, Natalie answered. So 2 months before the Thanksgiving dinner, where you claimed these promises were first made, Maria clarified, presenting mortgage documents to the court. You made the decision before the alleged promises. As the cross-examination continued, Maria methodically introduced evidence contradicting each of Natalie's claims. Bank records showed her extensive debt predated her marriage to Andrew. Text messages between Natalie and her sister revealed the calculated nature of their plan. Former in-laws testified to strikingly similar patterns of behavior in previous marriages. By the afternoon break, Natalie's carefully constructed narrative was in shambles. Judge Benson's expression had shifted from neutral to increasingly skeptical with each revealed inconsistency. During a recess, I overheard her attorney urgently whispering to her about considering a withdrawal of claims. The most powerful moment came when Andrew, originally listed as a co-plaintiff, asked to address the court as a witness for the defense. Natalie's face contorted with rage as her own husband approached the witness stand. I am here to tell the truth, he began, voice shaking. I was coerced and manipulated into joining this lawsuit. My father never made any promises regarding his estate to Natalie or her children. This entire case is based on fabrications designed to access my father's wealth. He went on to describe with painful honesty how Natalie had systematically isolated him from friends and family, controlled his communications, and threatened him when he questioned her actions. As he spoke, I saw the son I had raised re-emerging, taking responsibility and standing up for what was right despite the personal cost. Natalie's attorney requested a recess to confer with his client. When court resumed, he announced they were withdrawing all claims against me. Judge Benson was not satisfied with this attempt to avoid judgment. Given the evidence presented, this court finds not only that the plaintiff's claims are without merit, but that they were brought in bad faith with malicious intent, she stated firmly. The counterclaims for legal fees and damages are granted in full. Furthermore, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for possible perjury charges based on the false affidavits submitted to this court. She looked directly at Natalie. In my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen such a blatant abuse of the legal system to perpetrate what amounts to attempted extortion. You should be ashamed. As we left the courthouse, reporters, who had come expecting a sensational story about a wealthy businessman refusing to support his grandchildren, instead witnessed Natalie's public humiliation. Several approached me for comment, but Maria smoothly intercepted them with a prepared statement about the court's findings, vindicating me completely. Andrew walked out with us, physically separating himself from Natalie for the first time in public. Daddy said quietly, I know I do not deserve it, but I would like to come home. The months following the court victory were focused on healing and rebuilding. Andrew temporarily moved into my house while beginning divorce proceedings against Natalie. Without her financial manipulation, the divorce progressed quickly, with Andrew making no claims against her limited assets in exchange for full custody of Emma and Jack. Sarah, showing remarkable grace, worked closely with us to reestablish stability for the children. She adjusted her schedule to ensure the kids had maximum time with both parents and me. The first weekend Emma and Jack stayed at my house again was filled with tears, hugs, and their favorite pancake breakfast on Sunday morning. Grandpa Emma said as we washed dishes together, I was scared we would never see you again. Natalie said you did not want us anymore. That could never be true, I assured her, heart breaking at the thought of what they had been through. You and Jack are my world." We knew she was lying. Jack chimed in with the straightforward confidence of an 8-year-old. "You would never stop loving us. Dad was just confused for a while." The wisdom of children never ceases to amaze me. Andrew's recovery was more complicated. The psychological manipulation he had experienced left deep scars on his confidence and self-trust. He began therapy, slowly rebuilding his sense of identity and learning to recognize the warning signs of controlling relationships. "I still do not understand how I let it happen," he confided one evening as we sat on my back porch. "I have a doctorate. I teach critical thinking. How did I fall for this?" "Intelligence does not make you immune to emotional manipulation," I told him. "She targeted you when you were vulnerable after the divorce and isolated you from everyone who might have helped you see what was happening. The important thing is that you found your way back." On the legal front, Natalie faced significant consequences. Beyond the financial judgment against her, the publicity surrounding the case made it difficult for her to restart her familiar pattern elsewhere. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she eventually moved to another state, presumably to find fresh targets. The entire ordeal prompted me to completely restructure my estate planning with airtight provisions. I established educational trusts for Emma and Jack that could not be accessed or controlled by anyone but them once they reached college age. I also set aside a portion of my assets for a foundation supporting children of divorce, hoping to create something positive from our family's painful experience. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome was my decision to become more directly involved with charitable giving. The question of legacy had been forced to the forefront of my mind, and I realized that while providing for my family remained my priority, I could do more with the wealth I had accumulated. I established a scholarship fund at the local community college for students starting second careers or returning to education after hardship. Through all of this, I learned that family is indeed defined by love, not legal documents or blood relationships. The people who stand by you when everything is at stake are your true family. I was fortunate to rediscover that my true family was with me all along, temporarily obscured but never truly gone. And if there was one silver lining to this difficult chapter, it was the deeper appreciation we all gained for the authentic connections in our lives. Andrew and I developed a more honest adult relationship than we had ever had before. Emma and Jack, despite their young ages, learned valuable lessons about resilience and integrity that will serve them throughout their lives. As for me, at 65, I discovered I still had the fighting spirit that built my business decades ago. Some battles are worth fighting, especially when they involve protecting the people and principles you value most. I refused to be bullied or manipulated, and that decision, though painful in the moment, led to restoration rather than further loss. When faced with someone trying to take what you have worked for, standing firm is not just about the money or possessions. It is about honoring your own life's work and the values that guided it. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to protect your legacy from those who would exploit it. Have you ever had to stand up against manipulation within your own family? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about protecting what matters most. And if you know someone dealing with a toxic relationship or family conflict, sharing this video might give them the courage they need to stand firm. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, true family stands by you in both good times and bad, and that is a treasure worth fighting for.